Hi, I'm Lucy Paget, and I want to share with you 3 really lovely, sweet things that you can do that's simple to implement that will really change your state of health and your outlook and your sense of comfort and ease in your body. So the first of those things is your breath. And when we lengthen our exhale, we immediately shift our body into a parasympathetic state. And in the nervous system, we have these 2 branches, some might say 3 branches if you take into consideration some really cool new-ish science of the polyvagal theory, but we have these different aspects or ways of responding to stress. We have the sympathetic and the parasympathetic nervous system. And our parasympathetic nervous system is all about resting, digesting, being in that state where the body can settle into its automatic functions. And it's the state that some would say we should be in about 80% of the time. But because we have so many different demands, we tend to shift into a sympathetic, which is more our kind of adrenaline, busy, go state more of the time than we should have. So lengthening your exhale, and really paying attention to breathing with the lower part of your rib cage. So typically we will use our upper ribs, like a pumping movement, a little bit too much or a lot too much. And that makes our neck muscles get tight and chronically elevates the upper ribs. So clinically, what I see very, very often with patients osteopathically is elevated first ribs, elevated collarbone. And so these muscles, scalene muscles, which are in here, the sternocleidomastoid muscle, which is this one you can see on me that kind of comes down through there from the mastoid process behind down to here, and also kind of fanning back. It gets so tight through that area. So we need to learn to breathe more with our lower lateral rib cage, which is kind of like this expansion out to the side and back in, out to the side, back in. Imagine a fish. Imagine the gills of a fish opening and closing. And as I'm talking and you're imagining this, drop into a state where I know already you are feeling that in your body. And the diaphragm is this amazing dome-shaped muscle within us. And the diaphragm kind of looks like the dome of a cathedral or a parachute. And as we inhale, we bring air into our body, the diaphragm flattens, and then it rises again. And I'm talking kind of slowly because I want you to be paying attention and implementing this as we go, as I talk. And so we have this flattening movement and then this rising movement as air comes in and out. And that signals, as we exhale and inhale in this way, using our diaphragm more, it signals through our vagus nerve to our brainstem to switch us more into a parasympathetic healing state, well-being state, calm state. And as we breathe well, we're massaging the organs above and below the diaphragm. So our breath is one of the easiest and most important ways we can switch ourselves in to a healing state. And for this reason, in the movement medicine programs that I teach, the very first module is all about the breath. Breath combined with movement to start to learn to breathe better, to switch us into a healing state is really the foundation, is a really good first place to start. So there's my first tip. I've got 2 more quick tips for you, but first of all, I want to tell you about the weather in Nicaragua where I live. So it feels a little bit like Scotland. So I live in Central America, which is really nothing like Scotland. But right now there is a hurricane raging a little bit north of here and the rain is coming down. And a couple of weeks ago, we had similar weather, and it's so unusual. Usually by this time, here we are mid-November, usually by this time, the storms are over, the rain is over, we're getting towards the dry season, and it's just sun, beautiful weather. And the last hurricane, I really disliked the weather. And this is going to lead us into point number 2. But this morning, the rain's coming down. I'm watching this tree that's blowing, and it's the tree that usually around 5 o'clock all the bright green parakeets come to roost in. And so the tree's blowing around. It's really stormy and grey. And actually, before I was wearing a cardigan, which is so unusual, and I have my hot cup of coffee with me. Anyhow, I lay down because I had a bad night's sleep. The doors are rattling and shaking with all the wind, and everything was just super noisy. So I probably woke up around like 4:30, and I was not a particularly happy person earlier this morning. So I lay down, and this goes to point number 2, which is, what do you want the song of your life to be? And this point number 2 then goes into my other passion. So we have the healing passion, through which I'm really leading these movement medicine programs. And my other passion is really about living the best life. And I love this analogy. It kind of came to me yesterday, the song. What is the song that your being wants to sing? And through this type of thinking, I lead really, really accessible and wonderful life coaching, group life coaching programs online. And I call the life coaching program Sacred and Grounded, Sacred and Grounded. And it's really for bright, creative women who want to explore things like, what is the song that you want to be singing? And I've been exploring the theme of the witch, the wise woman and the healer recently, and looking at how the witch really is nothing more than, in some ways, an imaginary archetype to which we have given many different meanings over the centuries. From way back, the Greeks considered the witches to be kind of demigods or gods, otherworldly beings. And then the Romans decided that the witches actually were more human in nature. And then through the times of the witch trials, when 40 to 60,000 women were killed during these times of, I think it was 300 years, women, mostly women, 75%, who were considered witches were just evil. There was no benevolent aspect. Then in the 1800s, the witch title was reimagined, first of all, by a French author, Jules Michelet, who reimagined the witch to be this ecofeminist, to be in connection with nature. And that still captures our popular imagination now. The witch is this, or the witchy woman as being in connection with nature, not suppressing nature, but really the ecofeminist. And it ties really beautifully into many other traditions and shamanic concepts of being in connection with the nature as a way in to kind of like another world that is interwoven with this world that we live in. So as opposed to thinking about the other world as being somewhere distant, the other world we can actually think of in some traditions as really being interdigitated with this existence that we're in. And so finally, here we get to part 2. My suggestion for part 2, my second suggestion, is to go out in nature and go for a walk in the place you're in, to be connected with your own geography, instead of yearning for some distant geography to which you may have ancestral roots or to which you may just have a longing to go to. Connect with whatever geography you are in and find your way to a place where you can be comfortable, and maybe sit on a rock or sit against a tree or walk slowly and just see around you what calls out. Is it a tree? Is it a plant? Is it a rock? Is it the air? Is it a bird? And ask for a story. See if the world around you would be so kind as to share with you a story. And what may come may be a story, or it may be a song, or it may be a poem. And this is a very old concept of being gifted knowledge, being gifted information by the land, by the plants. You can look at many different cultures and see that there is this interconnection, this communication, which isn't a one-way communication. It's not just me or you going out and deciding what we think nature should be or could be, but it's actually a connection as though the plant material, the earth material, the air actually has sentience and can connect back with us and give us wisdom of its own in its own way. So my suggestion to you is to go out and try this and see what comes, and you may be surprised. And this then is a little way in which, as we start to gain information in this other way, as we start to drop into more of the parasympathetic healing state, we come more in resonance with our own beings. And so the third aspect that I want to talk about in this short little video is that resonance with your own being. What is the drumbeat of your own life? What is the vibration, the frequency, the way in which you want to live? What is the way you can be in harmony with really the depth of who you are? So we know that when we're stressed, so for example, if I start talking like this and I'm going really fast like that, I'm not in sync. I am not in sync with the better part of my being. And to come back into sync with who I am, for me, I will go for a walk. I will lie down like I did this morning, and I will rest, kind of meditate, visualize my way until I feel myself falling back into that sense of, here I am. And felt sense that you will know when you feel it. You will feel yourself coming into your being in a way where your heart opens. And perhaps if you give yourself long enough, you will feel that, and you will feel a connection with the space around you through your being. So it is very, very much a felt sense. So it is something that you need to do for yourself. Or I can teach you how in my Sacred and Grounded group. That is something that we do in 10, 15-minute blocks in every class that I teach. Really simply, you can lie down, put on some music that's fairly peaceful, that resonates with something good within you, or put on some shamanic drumming and just let yourself settle enough to get to that place where you really feel the song of your soul rise up. Now, I would love to see you, of course, in one of my programs, and you can find out all about what I have to offer over on my website, lucypaget.com, and you can take the free quiz and discover what movement medicine type you might need right now. Coming into December, I move into a really interesting theme in my life coaching called the inner imaginarium, where we start to use the power of our imagination, not just the fantasy aspect of imagination, but the power, the tool that we have with the imaginal part of our mind to connect with what it is that we're really wanting to bring in for 2021. And we need to be all the more intentional about that in order to set ourselves up in the face of so many restrictions, in the face of so much stopping and starting in the world outside of us. How can we resource ourselves within? So if that sounds like something that you'd like to explore, please message me. You can do that through my website, or lucy@lucypaget.com. To finish today, I'd like to leave you with a little poem, which is by Wendell Berry, The Peace of Wild Things. And I'm going to read it twice, because the first time we hear a poem, we tend to hear the sounds. The second time, we take in more of the meaning. When despair for the world grows in me, and I wake in the night at the least sound, in fear of what my life and my children's lives may be, I go and lie down where the wood drake rests in his beauty on the water, and the great heron feeds. I come into the peace of wild things, who do not tax their lives with forethought of grief. I come into the presence of still water, and I feel above me the day-blind stars waiting with their light. For a time I rest in the grace of the world and am free. I'm going to read that one more time. The peace of wild things. When despair for the world grows in me, and I wake in the night at the least sound in fear of what my life and my children's lives may be, I go and lie down where the wood drake rests in his beauty on the water, and the great heron feeds. I come into the peace of wild things, who do not tax their lives with forethought of grief. I come into the presence of still water, and I feel above me the day-blind stars waiting with their light. For a time, I rest in the grace of the world and am free. Wishing you well, wishing you love.